Hello everyone and happy Tuesday. It's hard to believe that we're already in the third week of Advent and in the middle of December. Although I guess if you look at the weather outside, it's not that hard to believe. In addition to my various roles here at the parish, I've also had the opportunity to teach the second grade religion class over at the school, which has been such a joy, definitely one of the highlights of my time here. And a couple of months ago, I began to realize that I was trying to fit too much information into too short of a class period. And something that I did notice was how much the kids loved when I told stories, either when I read a book or we watched a video that was telling a story. And so I decided, let's slow down the class a little bit. Let's incorporate story time a little bit more consistently into our class. So I began to read C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, just a little bit at a time. And we're near the end now, but we've been continuing that for a couple of months, and it's been so great. The kids have loved it, and I personally have really loved it as well. It's actually inspired me to read the whole series, so I'm working my way through that right now as well. And there's just something so amazing about reading fiction. It has the power to transport us to a different world, to free us from the tensions and the stress of daily life, and to just inspire curiosity in us. It's a form of play, of doing something simply for the sake of enjoyment. Yet this is a concept that's, as adults, is kind of hard for us to grasp or to live out. Doing something for that's not productive, no way. There's no time for that. Or doing something that's not efficient, then that's kind of a waste of time. This is kind of our mindset towards play. And so we've kind of struggled with and lost that ability in a way as adults. Yet in my students, I see this great desire to wonder, and to be curious, and to imagine. And I don't think that desire necessarily goes away when we're adults. But I do think that we either ignore it or kind of tell ourselves that it's not worthwhile. And the difficulty that we have as adults to play, I think, really has implications for our spiritual lives as well. Our kind of hyper focus on productivity and success influences how we're able to enter into our relationship with God. Soon, our relationship with God can become like everything else in our lives, which is something that needs to be successful or an obligation. And when we feel as though everything's an obligation, we can't freely enter into a relationship, which is what we're called to do. And the theologian Hugo Ronner says that someone who's playful imitates the quality of God's own creative power by his lightness of touch, by his regard for beauty, by his wisdom, and by the sober seriousness of his endeavor. Playfulness is not the same thing as silliness. Playfulness cultivates the disposition of abandonment that allows us to authentically and freely encounter God and enter into a relationship with him. This can't be taught by a lesson, by a sense of obligation, or even with a specific purpose in mind. Rather, it must be completely free so that we can then be free to move and to discover and to more fully live into our identities as children of God. So how can you play this week? Do you love to paint, to ride a bike, to read stories, maybe do puzzles? Is there something in your life that's fruitful and fulfilling, yet you haven't given yourself the time to do recently? I certainly tend to push some of these things off and often have days where I never get around to them. But what happens if we incorporated them into our days and prioritize them in our days? And let's see how that might change the way we go about our daily lives. So I'd encourage you to take some time this week to do something simply for the sake of enjoyment. And I hope it's a wonderful week for you, and I look forward to talking with you again next week.